Wyrm's Hollow, Unravel the Deadly Secrets of a Haunted Manor. Part 1. In the crisp autumn of 1927, the windswept plateau of Eldergrove, a remote and rugged expanse in northern England, played host to an enigmatic gathering. At the edge of the plateau, where wild gorse tangled with ancient yews, stood Wyrm's Hollow, a decaying Georgian manor steeped in whispered legends. Its weathered limestone facade, etched with the scars of time, glowered over the hamlet of Thornwick below. A scattering of stone cottages that clung to the earth as if bracing against some unseen force. For decades, the manor had lain empty, its last resident, the reclusive Lord Cedric Varnley, having vanished under circumstances that village gossip still failed to untangle. The manor's sudden reawakening came with the arrival of its new owner, Mrs. Eleanor Strathmore, a widow of considerable wealth and inscrutable motives. Eleanor, a statuesque woman in her late 40s, had a face that suggested both beauty and resolve, her sharp green eyes missing nothing. She had purchased Wyrm's Hollow sight unseen, a decision that baffled the villagers, who spoke of draughty halls and strange noises echoing from the manor's upper floors. Yet Eleanor was undeterred, announcing her intention to restore the estate and host a select group of guests for an autumnal retreat. The invitation, penned in her elegant hand, promised intellectual discourse, fine dining, and the unveiling of a most curious discovery found within the manor's walls. The guests, 5 in number, arrived on a chill October evening, their motorcars crunching along the gravel drive as mist curled from the surrounding woods. First was Dr. Percival Holt, a bespectacled historian of medieval manuscripts, whose nervous habit of polishing his glasses betrayed an anxious disposition. He had been invited, he claimed, to examine a rare document Eleanor had uncovered in the manor's library. Next came Miss Lavinia Gray, a playwright of modest fame, her sharp wit and penchant for cryptic remarks making her a figure of intrigue in London's literary circles. She carried a leather-bound notebook, which she clutched as if it held secrets of its own. The third guest, Mr. Roland Fairfax, was a retired barrister with a booming voice and a penchant for port. His florid cheeks and tailored suits suggested a man accustomed to comfort, yet his eyes darted about with the wariness of one who had seen too many courtroom betrayals. Following him was Mrs. Clara Winthrop, a botanist whose quiet demeanor and ink-stained fingers hinted at hours spent in solitary study. Her connection to Eleanor was unclear, though she mentioned a shared interest in rare flora. Last was Mr. Julian Tate, a young artist with a disheveled mop of dark hair and a brooding air. His paintings, known for their haunting depictions of desolate landscapes, had recently caught Eleanor's eye at a gallery in York. The group gathered in the manor's cavernous drawing-room, where a fire roared in a hearth carved with serpentine motifs. The room was a study in faded grandeur. Threadbare tapestries hung alongside portraits of stern-faced Varnleys, and a chandelier flickered with the uncertainty of old wiring. Eleanor, resplendent in a velvet gown, welcomed her guests with a smile that was both warm and faintly calculating. "You are here," she said, raising a glass of sherry, "not merely for respite, but to unravel a puzzle. Within these walls lies a secret that has eluded discovery for generations. Tomorrow, I shall reveal what I have found, and I trust your collective intellect will illuminate its meaning." Dinner was a sumptuous affair, served by a taciturn housekeeper, Mrs. Dodd, and a gangly footman named Thomas, both of whom seemed to materialize from the shadows. The conversation danced from medieval lore to modern theater, though an undercurrent of tension rippled beneath the pleasantries. Dr. Holt fidgeted with his napkin, muttering about the Manor's unwholesome aura. Miss Gray's barbed jests drew uneasy laughter, while Fairfax's anecdotes about legal scandals felt oddly pointed. Clara Winthrop spoke little, her gaze fixed on the flickering candles, and Julian Tate's silence was broken only by cryptic murmurs about the weight of unseen eyes. As the evening drew to a close, Eleanor rose, her expression enigmatic. "Before we retire, I must share a detail. In the library, I discovered a hidden compartment containing a letter from Lord Cedric Varnley. It speaks of a treasure, not of gold, but of knowledge, concealed within Wyrm's hollow. The letter is incomplete, its clues obscured by cipher. Tomorrow, we shall examine it together." Her words hung in the air, met by a chorus of intrigued murmurs and skeptical glances. The guests dispersed to their rooms, each on a different floor of the sprawling manor. The corridors, lined with creaking floorboards and portraits whose eyes seemed to follow, amplified the night's unease. At midnight a scream shattered the silence, a piercing cry from the second floor. The guests, roused from sleep, converged in the hallway, their faces pale in the glow of hastily lit candles. Eleanor, clad in a silk dressing gown, stood at the center of the group, her composure unshaken. "It came from the library," she said, leading the way. The library was a vast chamber, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes and its air thick with the scent of mildew. A single window, unlatched, swung gently in the night breeze. On the floor, sprawled beside an overturned chair, lay Mrs. Dodd, the housekeeper. Her eyes were wide with terror, her lips parted as if frozen mid-scream. Dr. Holt, kneeling beside her, checked her pulse and shook his head. "She's dead," he whispered. "No marks, no blood. It's as if her heart simply stopped." The guests exchanged wary glances. Fairfax, his voice unsteady, demanded, "What was she doing here at this hour?" Clara Winthrop pointed to a desk, where a sheet of parchment lay beside a spilled inkpot. "That must be the letter Mrs. Strathmore mentioned," she said. Eleanor retrieved it, her hands steady despite the circumstances. The parchment was yellowed, its text a jumble of cryptic symbols and fragmented sentences. "This is Varnley's letter," she confirmed. "But it's been disturbed. Someone was here before us." Miss Gray, her eyes narrowing, remarked, "Or someone never left." Her words cast a chill over the room. Thomas, the footman, hovered at the doorway, his face ashen. "I saw her, Mrs. Dodd, heading to the library earlier," he stammered. "She said she needed to check something for Mrs. Strathmore." Eleanor's gaze flickered to Thomas, then to the guests. "We must remain calm," she said. "This is a tragedy, but we cannot leap to conclusions. Tomorrow, we shall summon the authorities. For now, let us secure the library and retire." As the guests returned to their rooms, the manor seemed to pulse with secrets. The letter, now locked in Eleanor's possession, held clues that none could yet decipher. Mrs. Dodd's death, sudden and unexplained, raised questions that gnawed at the edges of reason. Had she stumbled upon something dangerous? Was her death natural, or had someone ensured her silence? And what of the treasure Varnley's letter promised? A treasure that seemed to draw the guests like moths to a flame. In her room, Miss Grey scribbled furiously in her notebook, her mind racing with possibilities. Dr. Holt, unable to sleep, paced his chamber, muttering about cursed houses. Fairfax poured himself a brandy, his hands trembling. Clara Winthrop sat by her window, sketching a sprig of gorse by candlelight, her thoughts inscrutable. Julian Tate stared at the ceiling, his artist's imagination conjuring shapes in the darkness. And Eleanor Strathmore, alone in her study, reread Varnley's letter, her lips curving into a faint, unreadable smile. The night passed uneasily, the manor creaking under the weight of its mysteries. By morning, the guests would face not only the enigma of Mrs. Dodd's death but the deeper riddle of Wyrm's hollow itself. Each harbored their own secrets, their own reasons for accepting Eleanor's invitation. And as the sun rose over Eldergrove, casting long shadows across the plateau, the stage was set for a game of wits where truth was as elusive as the wind. Part 2. The Cipher's Whisper. Dawn broke over Eldergrove with a reluctant light, the sun struggling through a veil of mist that clung to Wyrm's hollow like a shroud. The manor's guests, bleary-eyed and subdued, gathered in the dining room, where a meager breakfast of tea and toast awaited. The absence of Mrs. Dodd was palpable. Thomas, the footman, served in her stead, his hands unsteady as he poured from a chipped teapot. Eleanor Strathmore presided at the head of the table, her composure a stark contrast to the unease that rippled through the room. The events of the previous night, Mrs. Dodd's scream, her lifeless body in the library, hung over the group like a storm cloud. "We cannot proceed as if nothing has happened," Fairfax declared, his barrister's voice cutting through the clink of china. "A woman is dead, and we are isolated here, miles from proper authorities. Mrs. Strathmore, what do you propose?" His tone carried an edge, as if testing her authority. Eleanor met his gaze with a calm that bordered on defiance. "The village constable has been summoned," she replied. "He will arrive by midday. Until then, we must preserve order and, if possible, shed light on this tragedy ourselves. Mrs. Dodd's death may yet prove natural, but we cannot ignore the circumstances. Dr. Holt, polishing his glasses with a napkin, interjected. "Circumstances? A scream in the dead of night, a disturbed letter, an unlatched window. It's hardly the picture of a heart attack." His voice trembled, betraying the scholar's discomfort with matters beyond manuscripts. Miss Lavinia Gray, seated beside him, arched an eyebrow. "And yet, Doctor, you were quick to pronounce her dead. No marks, you said? Curious, isn't it, how a scream can stop a heart without leaving a trace?" Her words, laced with mockery, drew a flush to Holt's cheeks. Clara Winthrop, who had been silent, spoke softly. "The letter. It's the key, isn't it? Mrs. Dodd was found near it, and someone had tampered with the desk. Perhaps she saw something she shouldn't have." Her observation, delivered with the precision of a botanist classifying a specimen, shifted the room's focus. Julian Tate, slouched in his chair, stirred. "Or someone wanted to see what she'd found," he murmured, his dark eyes flicking toward Eleanor. The widow's expression remained unreadable, though her fingers tightened briefly around her teacup. Eleanor rose, smoothing her skirt. "You are all correct in one regard. The letter is central. Let us examine it now, together, and see what Lord Varnley's words reveal. If there is a connection to Mrs. Dodd's death, we shall uncover it. She led the group to the library, where the air still carried the faint chill of the previous night. The overturned chair had been righted, but the desk bore the stains of spilled ink, a silent testament to the housekeeper's final moments. Eleanor unlocked a small safe hidden behind a portrait, and produced the parchment, its cryptic symbols glinting in the morning light. The letter was a peculiar artifact, a single sheet, brittle with age, covered in a mix of legible script and arcane glyphs. The legible portions read like fragments of a confession. To the one who deciphers my intent, it began. Know that Wyrm's hollow guards a truth worth more than gold. Seek the serpent's coil, where shadow meets stone. Trust not the mirror's gaze. The rest dissolved into a code, rows of triangles, circles, and slash lines that defied immediate understanding. Dr. Holt, peering over Eleanor's shoulder, adjusted his glasses. It's a substitution cipher, I'd wager. Varnley was known for his obsession with cryptography. But we need a key to unlock it. Miss Grey, ever the provocateur, leaned forward. Or perhaps the key is not on the page but in this house. Serpent's coil, shadow meets stone. These sound like directions. Mrs. Strathmore, have you explored the manor thoroughly? Her question carried a hint of accusation, but Eleanor's smile was serene. Not every nook, Miss Grey. Wyrm's hollow is a labyrinth. But I assure you, I've hidden nothing from you. Fairfax snorted, muttering about convenient discoveries, while Clara Winthrop traced a glyph with her finger, lost in thought. The group agreed to divide their efforts. Dr. Holt and Clara would remain in the library, attempting to decode the cipher using Varnley's books as reference. Fairfax and Julian Tate would search the manor's ground floor for anything resembling serpent's coil. Eleanor and Miss Grey, meanwhile, would investigate the upper floors, where Varnley's private quarters lay untouched. As they dispersed, Thomas lingered, his gaze darting nervously. Mrs. Strathmore, he whispered. Mrs. Dodd, she told me yesterday she'd found something odd in the cellar. A locked door, behind some crates. She meant to tell you. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Thank you, Thomas. We shall look into it. The search yielded little at first. Fairfax and Tate scoured the drawing room and dining hall, finding only dust and faded grandeur. The serpent motifs on the hearth and banisters, while striking, offered no hidden compartments or clues. In the library, Holt and Clara pored over dusty tomes, their progress stymied by the cipher's complexity. Clara, however, noticed a pattern. Certain glyphs resembled botanical symbols she'd encountered in her studies. Varnley may have drawn from herbology, she mused. These could represent plants, yew, perhaps, or mandrake. Holt, skeptical but intrigued, began cross-referencing her theory. Upstairs, Eleanor and Miss Grey navigated a maze of corridors, their footsteps echoing on warped floorboards. Varnley's quarters, sealed since his disappearance, were a time capsule of eccentricity, alchemical charts pinned to the walls, a telescope aimed at a boarded window, and a mirror framed with carved snakes. Miss Grey paused before the mirror, her reflection distorted by its cracked surface. "Trust not the mirror's gaze," she quoted, tapping the glass. It gave a hollow sound, but no mechanism revealed itself. Eleanor watched her closely, her expression unreadable. "You suspect a hidden panel, Miss Gray?" she asked. The playwright smirked. "I suspect everything, Mrs. Strathmore." By noon, the constable, a ruddy-faced man named Sergeant Poole, arrived on a bicycle, his notebook already open. He listened to Eleanor's account of Mrs. Dodd's death, inspected the library, and questioned each guest. His inquiries were blunt but thorough, focusing on alibis and motives. None had a clear reason to harm the housekeeper, yet Poole's shrewd eyes lingered on Thomas, who stammered under scrutiny. "She was a good woman, Mrs. Dodd," the footman insisted. "I'd never hurt her." Poole nodded unconvinced, and promised to return with the coroner by evening. As the sergeant departed, the guests reconvened in the library, their findings sparse but tantalizing. Fairfax reported a locked door in the cellar, corroborating Thomas's story. Clara shared her botanical theory, suggesting the cipher might point to a specific location in the Manor's overgrown gardens. Miss Gray, with a theatrical flourish, produced a scrap of paper she'd found tucked behind Varnley's mirror, a sketch of a spiral staircase, annotated with the word "coil." Eleanor, absorbing each revelation, proposed a new plan. They would investigate the cellar and gardens after lunch, while Holt continued his work on the cipher. Lunch was a tense affair, the guests' appetites dulled by suspicion. Fairfax pressed Eleanor about her purchase of the manor, hinting at ulterior motives. "A widow with your means could live anywhere. Why this forsaken place?" Eleanor's reply was smooth. "Curiosity, Mr. Fairfax. And a desire to preserve history." Julian Tate, silent until now, spoke softly. "Or to uncover it. Some histories are better left buried." His words, vague yet ominous, drew a sharp glance from Clara. As the group prepared to explore the cellar, a discovery halted them. Thomas, clearing the dining table, found a small vial beneath Mrs. Dodd's usual chair. It was empty, its label illegible, but a faint herbal scent lingered. Clara, sniffing it cautiously, paled. "This could be a tincture, possibly toxic. You, maybe, or something rarer." The revelation cast a new shadow over Mrs. Dodd's death. Had she been poisoned? And if so, who had access to such a substance? The cellar door, hidden behind crates of moldering wine, was bolted but not locked. Fairfax forced it open, revealing a damp stone passage that descended into darkness. Eleanor lit a lantern, its glow illuminating walls etched with faint, serpentine carvings. The group hesitated, each aware that the answers they sought might come at a cost. Miss Gray, her notebook clutched tightly, murmured, "The serpent's coil awaits." As they stepped into the unknown, Wyrm's hollow seemed to tighten its grip, its secrets coiled like a snake ready to strike. Part 3: The Serpent's Descent. The cellar passage beneath Wyrm's hollow was a claustrophobic tunnel, its damp stone walls pressing close as the lantern's light flickered. Eleanor Strathmore led the way, her silhouette sharp against the serpentine carvings that writhed along the walls. Behind her, the guests followed in uneasy silence, their breaths misting in the chill air. Fairfax's heavy footsteps echoed, punctuated by his muttered complaints about the damned fool's errand. Miss Lavinia Gray, clutching her notebook, scanned the carvings with a playwright's eye for detail, while Julian Tate's brooding gaze lingered on the shadows. Clara Winthrop, her botanist's instincts alert, noted the faint scent of earth and decay, tinged with something sharper, perhaps the same herbal note from the vial found at lunch. Dr. Holt, lagging behind, clutched a notebook of his own, scribbling observations with a trembling hand. The passage sloped downward, its carvings growing more intricate, a procession of coiled snakes, their eyes rendered as polished obsidian that glinted in the lantern's glow. "These are older than the manor," Clara murmured, tracing a carving with her finger. "Pre-Christian, perhaps? Varnley must have built over an ancient site." Her words stirred unease. The idea of Wyrm's Hollow as a palimpsest of forgotten rituals lent the tunnel an oppressive weight. Eleanor, undeterred, pressed forward. "Varnley's letter spoke of a serpent's coil," she said. "This must be it." After what felt like an eternity, the passage opened into a circular chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. The floor was a mosaic of interlocking spirals, centered on a stone plinth engraved with the same cryptic glyphs as Varnley's letter. On the plinth rested a small iron box, its surface pitted with rust but intact. Fairfax, his barrister's instincts kicking in, stepped forward. "Is this the treasure, then? Locked away like evidence in a trial?" His tone was skeptical, but his eyes gleamed with curiosity. Eleanor knelt beside the plinth, examining the box. "No lock," she observed, her fingers brushing its lid. "But it's sealed tight. We'll need tools to open it." Miss Gray, ever quick to challenge, tilted her head. "Or perhaps it's not meant to be opened yet." "Shadow meets stone," the letter said. "This chamber is all stone, but where's the shadow?" She gestured at the lantern, which cast shifting patterns across the mosaic. Julian Tate, silent until now, pointed to the plinth's base, where a faint outline suggested a hidden panel. "There," he said, his voice low. "The shadow falls there." Clara, kneeling to inspect the panel, found a small indentation shaped like a coiled snake. "It's a mechanism," she said. "Something fits here, a key, perhaps, or a medallion." The group exchanged glances, each wondering if Varnley's letter held further clues. Dr. Holt, flipping through his notes, stammered, "The cipher. It might describe the key's location. I've made progress. Some glyphs match symbols in Varnley's alchemical texts. They point to the garden, I think." His excitement was tempered by a nervous glance at the chamber's walls, as if expecting them to close in. Eleanor proposed returning to the surface to regroup and investigate the garden, but Fairfax objected. "We're here now. Let's search this place thoroughly. Mrs. Dodd died for something, and I'll wager it's connected to this box." His insistence carried a hint of desperation, as if he feared the answers slipping away. Miss Gray smirked. "Eager to play detective, Mr. Fairfax? Or do you know more than you're letting on?" Her barb drew a scowl, but before Fairfax could retort, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, a grinding of stone that set the mosaic trembling. The group froze, the lantern's light wavering. Clara, closest to the plinth, gasped as the panel at its base slid open, revealing a shallow recess. Inside lay a small bronze disc, engraved with a serpent swallowing its tail. "The Ouroboros," she whispered, lifting it carefully. "This must be the key." But as she spoke, the rumbling ceased, replaced by a faint, rhythmic tapping from above. Thomas, who had followed at a distance, paled. "That's from the cellar door," he stammered. "Someone's up there." The group ascended hastily, the bronze disc clutched in Clara's hand. Emerging into the cellar, they found the door ajar, its bolt bent as if forced. Footprints in the dust led toward the manor's ground floor, but no one was in sight. Fairfax, his face flushed, demanded, "Who else is in this house?" "Mrs. Strathmore, you said only we were here." Eleanor's calm wavered for a moment, her eyes narrowing. "So I believed. Thomas, check the servants' quarters. The rest of you, stay together." Back in the library, the group examined the bronze disc. Its serpent design matched the indentation Clara had found, but its purpose remained unclear. Dr. Holt, poring over Varnley's letter, announced a breakthrough. "The cipher's key is botanical, as Miss Winthrop suggested. The glyphs represent plants, yew, mandrake, and belladonna. They correspond to a sequence in the garden's layout. Varnley's notes mention a stone of shadow near the yew grove. His discovery pointed to a new destination, but the tapping in the cellar lingered in their minds. Had someone else been in the chamber, listening? The garden, overgrown and tangled, was a wilderness of gnarled trees and crumbling statues. The yew grove, at its heart, was a circle of ancient trees surrounding a weathered obelisk. The stone of shadow, as Holt called it, bore a faint carving of a serpent, its lines worn but unmistakable. Clara placed the bronze disc against it, but nothing happened. Miss Gray, circling the obelisk, noticed a discrepancy. "The shadow's wrong," she said, pointing to the sun's position. "At dusk, it might align differently." Varnley loved his games. As the group debated waiting for dusk, Sergeant Poole returned with a coroner, a dour man named Dr. Grayson. The coroner's preliminary examination of Mrs. Dodd's body, conducted in the manor's cold pantry, yielded a troubling finding: traces of a toxic alkaloid in her system, likely from a plant like belladonna. The vial found at lunch, now in Poole's possession, was sent for analysis, but Grayson's verdict was clear: poison, administered shortly before death. The guests exchanged uneasy glances. Belladonna, Clara noted, grew wild in the garden, a fact she'd mentioned to Eleanor days earlier. Poole questioned the group again, his focus sharpening. Who had access to the dining room before lunch? And who knew Mrs. Dodd's habits? Thomas admitted to preparing the table alone, but swore he'd seen no vial. Fairfax, defensive, pointed out that anyone could have slipped into the room unnoticed. Miss Gray, with a sly smile, suggested, or perhaps Mrs. Dodd poisoned herself. A woman with secrets might choose a dramatic exit. Her theory, though far-fetched, sowed doubt. Julian Tate, silent through the interrogation, watched Eleanor closely, as if searching for a crack in her composure. Eleanor, sensing the group's fracturing trust, proposed a bold move. "We shall return to the yew grove at dusk. If Varnley's clue unlocks the obelisk, we may find answers, not just to his riddle, but to Mrs. Dodd's death." Her resolve steadied the others, though suspicion simmered beneath their agreement. As they prepared to leave the library, Clara noticed a book on the desk, open to a page about belladonna's medicinal uses. It hadn't been there before. "Someone's been reading," she said, her voice barely audible. Dusk painted the yew grove in hues of amber and gray, the obelisk's shadow stretching toward a nearby statue. Clara placed the bronze disc again, and this time, a faint click echoed. The obelisk's base shifted, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Varnley's spidery script. Eleanor, lifting it carefully, read aloud. The truth of Wyrm's hollow lies not in wealth, but in betrayal. The serpent guards the guilty. The journal's entries detailed Varnley's fear of enemies within his household, servants, kin, even friends, who coveted his secrets. As the group absorbed this, a figure emerged from the trees. Thomas, his face pale and eyes wide. "I found something," he gasped. "In Mrs. Dodd's room, a letter half burned. It mentioned the journal, and someone here." Before he could elaborate, a sharp crack rang out, like a branch snapping. Thomas clutched his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. The group scattered, seeking cover, as the journal fell to the grass, its pages fluttering in the gathering dark. Part 4. The Journal's Secrets. The yew grove dissolved into chaos as the sharp crack echoed, its origin lost in the deepening dusk. Thomas staggered, blood staining his sleeve, his cry of pain swallowed by the rustle of leaves. Eleanor Strathmore, with a composure that bordered on uncanny, seized the fallen journal and ushered the group toward the manor, her voice cutting through the panic. "Inside, now! We're exposed here." Fairfax, his barrister's bluster muted, helped Thomas, while Clara Winthrop clutched the bronze disc, her botanist's calm fraying. Miss Lavinia Gray, her notebook abandoned in the grass, scanned the trees with a predator's intensity. Julian Tate, last to move, lingered by the obelisk, his dark eyes fixed on the shadows as if they held answers. Inside Wyrm's hollow, the drawing room became a makeshift refuge. Thomas, pale but coherent, sat by the fire as Clara bandaged his arm. "It's a graze," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "The bullet didn't lodge." The word bullet hung heavy, confirming what all had feared. Someone had fired a shot, and it was no accident. Sergeant Poole, who had lingered to confer with the coroner, took charge, his ruddy face grim. "This is attempted murder," he declared, his notebook open. "I'll need statements from everyone. And that journal, hand it over, Mrs. Strathmore." Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tightening on the leather-bound volume, but relinquished it under Poole's insistent gaze. The journal, penned by Lord Cedric Varnley, was a labyrinth of paranoia and cryptic warnings. Its entries, dated decades earlier, spoke of a truth hidden in Wyrm's hollow, a secret so potent it had driven Varnley to encrypt his knowledge and distrust his household. One passage, read aloud by Poole, chilled the room. "The serpent's coil is my sanctuary, but even there, betrayal lurks. My steward, my kin, my confidant, all wear masks. The guilty will be unmasked by the stone of shadow." Fairfax, pacing, seized on the words. "Betrayal!" Varnley feared someone close, perhaps his steward, like Mrs. Dodd was to you, Mrs. Strathmore. Did she know too much? His accusation, blunt as a gavel, drew a sharp look from Eleanor. "Mrs. Dodd was loyal," she said coolly. "If she uncovered something, it was in service to me." Miss Gray, lounging in an armchair, interjected with a wry smile. Loyalty can be a mask, too. Thomas mentioned a letter in her room. What did it say, boy? Thomas, wincing as Clara tied the bandage, stammered. It was burned, mostly. I saw a journal and a name, one of you. But I didn't read it fully before this. He gestured to his wound. Poole, scribbling notes, pressed Thomas for the name, but the footman shook his head, his fear palpable. Dr. Holt, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice quavering. This is madness. First poison, now bullets? We're being hunted, and that journal is the cause. Varnley's truth, it's cursed. His outburst, uncharacteristic for the timid scholar, drew a scoff from Julian Tate. Cursed or not, someone wants it hidden. The shot wasn't random. Thomas saw something, and they silenced him. His words, delivered with an artist's intensity, shifted suspicion back to the group. Eleanor proposed examining the journal further, but Poole, wary of tampering, locked it in the library safe alongside Varnley's ciphered letter. No one touches it until the coroner returns with reinforcements, he ordered. And no one leaves this room. The guests, confined to the drawing room, sat in uneasy silence, the fire's crackle underscoring their tension. Clara, sketching the Ouroboros disc absent-mindedly, murmured, The journal mentioned a confidant. Varnley had a friend. A scholar, perhaps, like Dr. Holt. Holt flushed, polishing his glasses furiously. I never met Varnley. My interest is academic, nothing more. Miss Gray, ever the provocateur, leaned forward. Academic, yet you're here, chasing his riddles. And you, Mr. Fairfax, your courtroom tales suggest a man who knows how to hide guilt. What brought you to this forsaken place? Fairfax bristled, his cheeks reddening. I was invited, same as you. If you're sniffing for motives, look to the artist. Tate's been skulking about, saying little, seeing everything. Julian met Fairfax's glare with a faint smile. I see what's there, not what you wish me to see. As accusations flew, Poole's questions grew pointed. He focused on the vial of poison, the cellar footprints, and the shot in the grove. Clara admitted to studying belladonna in the garden, but denied handling it. Fairfax claimed to have been in the dining room alone before lunch, checking the wine. Holt confessed to wandering the library late at night, unable to sleep. Miss Gray, with a theatrical sigh, admitted to exploring the upper floors for inspiration. Julian, pressed for an alibi, said he'd been sketching in his room, though no sketches were produced. Eleanor, questioned last, stated she'd been in her study, reviewing estate papers, a claim Thomas couldn't verify. The coroner, Dr. Grayson, returned at midnight, bringing news that deepened the mystery. The vial's residue matched belladonna, confirming Mrs. Dodd's poisoning. Moreover, a faint bruise on her wrist suggested a struggle, unnoticed in the initial examination. She fought someone, Grayson said. Likely just before she died. The revelation cast doubt on the heart attack theory, pointing to murder. Poole, now treating the manor as a crime scene, stationed himself in the library, guarding the safe. Left alone, the guests retreated to their rooms, though sleep eluded them. Clara, in her chamber, pored over her sketch of the Ouroboros, noticing a tiny notch in its design, a clue, perhaps, to another mechanism. Holt, pacing, reread his notes on Varnley's cipher, convinced the Stone of Shadow held more secrets. Fairfax, nursing a brandy, scribbled a letter to his solicitor, his hands unsteady. Miss Grey, by candlelight, wrote in her notebook, her pen racing as if chasing a revelation. Julian, staring at a blank canvas, painted a single stroke. A coiled snake in crimson. Eleanor, alone in her study, unlocked a hidden drawer and withdrew a photograph, a younger Mrs. Dodd, standing beside a man resembling Varnley. Her expression, as she studied it, was unreadable. Downstairs, Thomas, recovering in the servants' quarters, clutched a scrap of the burned letter he'd hidden from Poole. It bore a single legible word: Strathmore. Morning brought a fragile calm, the mist over Eldergrove thinning to reveal the Manor's stark silhouette. Poole, bleary-eyed, announced that reinforcements, a detective inspector from York, would arrive by noon. Until then, he urged the guests to cooperate in reconstructing the night of Mrs. Dodd's death. Eleanor, seizing the moment, suggested revisiting the Yew Grove, arguing that Varnley's journal might point to the killer's motive. "If we solve his riddle," she said, "we may unmask the guilty." The group, wary but intrigued, agreed, though Fairfax insisted Poole accompany them. In the grove, the obelisk stood unchanged, its compartment empty save for a faint inscription missed before. "The serpent's truth is threefold: knowledge, betrayal, sacrifice." Clara, tracing the words, felt the Ouroboros disc's notch aligned with a groove in the stone. She pressed it, and a soft click sounded, but nothing opened. "It's incomplete," she said. "There's another piece." As they debated, Miss Grey retrieved her notebook from the grass, its pages damp but intact. A single entry, written the previous night, caught her eye. "The mirror in Varnley's room, its frame moves." She kept this to herself, her mind spinning with possibilities. Fairfax, meanwhile, noticed a glint in the underbrush, a spent bullet casing, its surface gleaming. He pocketed it, his face grim, as Poole's attention was elsewhere. Back in the Manor, Holt shared a new deciphered fragment from Varnley's letter. "The mirror hides the final coil." The group, now fixated on Varnley's quarters, ascended to the upper floor, their steps heavy with anticipation. The mirror, with its serpentine frame, loomed in the dusty room. Julian, acting on impulse, pressed its edge, and a panel slid open, revealing a second disc, this one silver, etched with a serpent's eye. As Clara reached for it, a floorboard creaked behind them, and the lights flickered, plunging Wyrm's hollow into darkness. Part 5. The Mirror's Truth. Darkness enveloped Wyrm's hollow as the lights failed, the creak of the floorboard amplifying the sudden silence. The air in Varnley's quarters grew thick with suspicion, the guests' breaths audible in the gloom. Clara Winthrop, her hand still outstretched toward the silver disc in the mirror's hidden panel, froze. Eleanor Strathmore's voice, calm but firm, cut through the tension. "Stay where you are. Sergeant Poole, the lantern, please." Poole, fumbling in the dark, lit the lantern from the cellar expedition, its glow casting jagged shadows across the serpentine mirror and the faces of the group. The silver disc, etched with a serpent's eye, gleamed in Clara's grasp. Its weight was heavier than the bronze Ouroboros, its craftsmanship finer, suggesting a purpose beyond mere decoration. "This is the second piece," Clara said, her botanist's precision steadying her voice. The obelisk's mechanism needs both discs. Dr. Percival Holt, clutching his notebook, stammered. The cipher mentioned a final coil. This must be it, Varney's last safeguard. His excitement was tempered by a nervous glance at the doorway, where the creak had sounded. Miss Lavinia Gray, her playwright's instincts alert, stepped toward the door, her silhouette sharp in the lantern's light. Someone was here, she said, her tone laced with accusation. Watching us, perhaps, or waiting. Fairfax, his barrister's bravado returning, scoffed. Or it's this blasted house, creaking like an old ship. Let's focus on the disc, not ghosts. Yet his hand, slipping into his pocket, brushed the bullet casing he'd found in the grove, a secret he kept for now. Julian Tate, silent and watchful, studied the group, his artist's eye catching the flicker of unease in Eleanor's composed features. Poole, his authority strained by the mounting mysteries, demanded order. No one leaves until we understand this disc's purpose. Mrs. Strathmore, you've led us this far. What now? Eleanor, her green eyes reflecting the lantern's glow, gestured to the mirror. Varney's letter warned against its gaze, yet it hides his secrets. We must return to the yew grove and test the discs together. But first, we restore the lights. Thomas, recovered enough to assist, volunteered to check the Manor's ancient fuse box in the cellar, accompanied by Poole for safety. As Thomas and Poole descended, the guests remained in Varney's quarters, the silver disc passing from hand to hand. Clara noticed a faint inscription on its rim, barely legible. The eye sees what the heart conceals. She shared this with Holt, who cross-referenced it with his deciphered notes. It's alchemical, he said. The serpent's eye symbolizes truth revealed through sacrifice. Varney believed his secret demanded a price. Miss Gray, overhearing, murmured, Sacrifice, like Mrs. Dodd's life? Or Thomas's near miss? Her words, sharp as a blade, drew a scowl from Fairfax. The lights flickered back on, dispelling the shadows but not the tension. Thomas returned, reporting a tripped fuse, likely from the Manor's faulty wiring. Poole, however, noticed fresh footprints in the cellar dust, smaller than Thomas's, suggesting another presence. Someone's moving through this house, he said, his voice grim. I'll search the servants' quarters again. The rest of you, stay together. His departure left the group under Eleanor's command, her authority now unquestioned but tinged with scrutiny. Eleanor led them to the yew grove, the silver and bronze discs in Clara's possession. The obelisk, bathed in moonlight, seemed to pulse with anticipation. Clara inserted both discs into the grooves at its base, the serpent's eye aligning with the Ouroboros. A low grinding sounded, and the obelisk's compartment widened, revealing a third disc. This one gold, etched with a serpent's tongue. Alongside it lay a sealed envelope, its wax stamped with Varney's crest. Eleanor broke the seal, unfolding a single page. It's a map, she said, her voice betraying a rare note of surprise. Of the Manor's undercroft, a chamber beneath the cellar. The map, drawn in Varney's hand, detailed a hidden passage branching from the serpentine tunnel. Its annotations spoke of a final truth, guarded by the serpent's tongue. Fairfax, peering over Eleanor's shoulder, muttered, Another riddle. This Varney was a lunatic. But Clara, studying the gold disc, felt a chill. The tongue, it's a key, like the others. But the map warns of a trap. Betrayal unlocks the door, but only sacrifice opens it. Her words echoed Varnley's journal, deepening the group's unease. Before they could proceed, Poole returned, his face ashen. I found the burned letter in Mrs. Dodd's room, or what's left of it. It names Mrs. Strathmore and mentions a debt to Varnley's family. Care to explain, madam? Eleanor's composure held, but her eyes hardened. Mrs. Dodd was my late husband's cousin. She came to Wyrm's Hollow at my request, to help restore it. If she owed a debt, it was familial, not sinister. Her explanation, smooth as silk, failed to quell suspicion. Miss Grey, with a sly smile, asked, "And the journal? Did she know of it before you discovered it?" Eleanor's silence was answer enough. Julian, breaking his usual reserve, spoke softly. "The letter Thomas saw. It wasn't burned when he found it. Someone destroyed it after he was shot." His accusation, delivered with quiet certainty, shifted attention to Thomas, who paled. "I hid the scrap I saved," the footman admitted, producing a charred fragment. It read, "Strathmore, Journal, Betrayer." The word betrayer hung like a guillotine, its target unclear. Poole, now overwhelmed, proposed waiting for the detective inspector, but Eleanor insisted on exploring the undercroft. "The map is our guide," she said. "If Varnley's truth explains Mrs. Dodd's death, we must find it." The group, driven by curiosity and fear, agreed, though Fairfax lagged, his hand still on the bullet casing. In the cellar, the serpentine tunnel felt colder, its carvings more menacing under the lantern's flicker. The map led to a concealed door, its lock shaped like a serpent's mouth. The gold disc, inserted by Clara, clicked, and the door swung open, revealing a stone chamber lit by an eerie phosphorescence. The undercroft was a shrine to Varnley's obsession, walls inscribed with alchemical symbols, a central altar bearing a crystal orb, and a locked chest engraved with the words, "Truth demands sacrifice." The gold disc unlocked the chest, revealing a bundle of letters. Varnley's correspondence with the scholar named Edmund Strathmore, Eleanor's late husband. The letters detailed a partnership turned sour, with Varnley accusing Strathmore of stealing his research on a philosopher's key, a formula for enlightenment, not wealth. The final letter cursed Strathmore's lineage, vowing the serpent would claim its due. Clara, reading aloud, paused. "This connects Mrs. Dodd to you, Mrs. Strathmore. She was a Strathmore by blood. Did she die to protect this secret? Or to expose it?" Eleanor's face was a mask, but her voice wavered. "I bought Wyrm's Hollow to uncover my husband's past, not to hide it. Mrs. Dodd helped me, but I didn't know Varnley's full story." Fairfax, unconvinced, brandished the bullet casing. "Then explain this, found where Thomas was shot. Someone here is a killer." Before Eleanor could respond, a metallic clank echoed from the tunnel. "Poole, investigating," shouted. The doors sealed. The group was trapped, the phosphorescence dimming. Miss Grey, her notebook lost but her wits intact, pointed to the orb. "It's a mechanism. Varnley's trap, sacrificed to escape." Julian, acting swiftly, pressed the orb, and a panel in the altar opened, revealing a lever. Pulling it released the door but triggered a low hiss, gas seeping from the walls. "Run!" Clara cried. As the group fled, the letters clutched in Eleanor's hands. They emerged, gasping, in the cellar, the door slamming shut behind them. Poole, coughing, counted heads, all present, but the gas had left them shaken. The letters, now scattered, revealed one final clue, a postscript in Varnley's hand, naming his confidant as a scholar with a serpent's tongue. Holt, trembling, whispered, "That's not me. But I know the name, it's in Varnley's books." As the group caught their breath, the Manor's shadows seemed to tighten, the serpent's truth coiling closer to its revelation. Part 6. The Serpent's Reckoning. The cellar of Wyrm's Hollow was a breathless refuge, the air heavy with the acrid tang of the gas that had nearly claimed the group. The guests, disheveled and shaken, gathered around the scattered letters from Varnley's chest, their faces illuminated by the flickering lantern. Eleanor Strathmore, clutching the correspondence, stood at the center, her composure fraying but intact. Sergeant Poole, his notebook sodden from the chaos, demanded silence. "We're alive, but not safe," he said, his voice hoarse. "Those letters, they name a killer, don't they?" His eyes, sharp with suspicion, darted from face to face. Clara Winthrop, her botanist's calm tested, knelt to gather the letters, her fingers brushing a page with a postscript. "The serpent's tongue speaks for my confidant, whose betrayal cuts deepest." Dr. Percival Holt, trembling beside her, seized on the clue. "The confidant, it's in Varnley's books. A scholar named Gideon Lyle, his closest ally. Lyle vanished with Varnley, but his initials, they're in the cipher." His revelation, delivered with a scholar's fervor, shifted the group's focus. Miss Lavinia Gray, her playwright's wit undimmed, tilted her head. "Initials? Or a misdirection?" The serpent's tongue could be anyone here, spinning lies. Fairfax, his barrister's instincts flaring, brandished the bullet casing he'd found in the yew grove. "Enough riddles. This proves someone's armed. Thomas was shot, Mrs. Dodd was poisoned, by the same hand, I'd wager. Mrs. Strathmore, your husband's name is all over those letters. What's your game?" Eleanor's green eyes met his, unflinching. "My game, Mr. Fairfax, is truth. My husband, Edmund, wronged Varnley, yes. I came to Wyrm's Hollow to right that wrong, not to bury it. Mrs. Dodd, my kin, knew this and died for it." Julian Tate, silent through the accusations, spoke softly, his artist's gaze piercing. "Died for it, or because of it? The burned letter Thomas found named you, Mrs. Strathmore, as betrayer. Why hide that?" Thomas, his arm bandaged, nodded, producing the charred scrap. It said Strathmore, betrayer. I didn't burn it. Someone else did, after I was shot. The word betrayer hung like a noose, tightening the circle of suspicion. Poole, piecing together the fragments, turned to the letters. One, penned by Varnley, described a formula, the philosopher's key. A blend of botanical extracts that promised clarity of mind but, in excess, was lethal. Belladonna, Clara whispered, her expertise surfacing. Varnley's formula used it. The vial we found, it wasn't a tincture, but his key. Mrs. Dodd was poisoned with it. The bruise on the housekeeper's wrist, noted by the coroner, suggested force. Someone had ensured she ingested it. Eleanor, sensing the tide turning, proposed a final step. The Undercroft's orb, it's the last piece. Varnley's trap released us, but the letters mention a final sacrifice. We must return. Poole, wary of another trap, hesitated, but the group's curiosity, and fear of remaining in the dark, prevailed. They descended again, the serpentine tunnel now a familiar gauntlet. The Undercroft's phosphorescence had faded, but the altar's crystal orb glowed faintly, its surface etched with the serpent's tongue. Clara, guided by the letters, pressed the gold disc into the orb's base. A click sounded, and the altar slid aside, revealing a shallow recess containing a single vial, identical to the one found at lunch, but filled with a clear liquid. A note, in Varnley's hand, lay beside it. The key unlocks truth, but only for one. The rest pay the price. Holt, his voice shaking, read aloud from his deciphered cipher. The serpent's tongue chooses the worthy. The guilty drink, the innocent walk free. The implication was chilling. The vial's contents, likely the philosopher's key, would reveal the truth, or kill. Fairfax, his patience spent, roared, "This is lunacy. Who drinks it? You, Mrs. Strathmore, since it's your family's mess?" Eleanor's lips curved into a faint smile. "If it proves my innocence, I will. But first, let us reason. Mrs. Dodd's death, Thomas's wound, the burned letter, all point to someone desperate to hide Varnley's truth." Miss Grey, her eyes narrowing, stepped forward. "Desperate, yes. But clever. The poisoner knew Belladonna's scent, the shooter knew the grove's shadows. Only one here fits both." She turned to Clara, her voice soft but lethal. "You, Miss Winthrop. A botanist, familiar with belladonna. You were in the garden, studying it. You were in the grove when Thomas was shot, and you found the discs so conveniently." Clara's face paled, but her voice held steady. "I study plants, not murder. If I were the killer, why reveal the vial's nature? Why save Thomas?" Fairfax, unconvinced, pointed to the bullet casing. "This was near your sketchbook in the grove. Care to explain?" Before Clara could respond, Julian intervened, his tone calm but commanding. "The casing isn't hers. It's mine." The group gasped, but he raised a hand. "Not from a gun. It's a prop, a metal tube I use for paintbrushes, dropped when we scattered. Check my room, you'll find others." Poole, skeptical, sent Thomas to verify, and the footman returned with a matching tube, deflating Fairfax's accusation. Clara, vindicated, turned the tables. "Miss Grey, you've been quick to accuse, yet you wanted the Manor alone, inspired. What did you burn in Mrs. Dodd's room?" Miss Grey's smirk faltered, but she recovered. "Nothing. I write, not destroy. But Mr. Tate, your prop story is convenient. And you, Dr. Holt, know more about Varnley than you admit. Those initials, GL, could be yours, Miss Reed." Holt, flustered, protested, but Eleanor silenced the bickering. "Enough. The vial is our answer. I'll drink it, as Varnley intended." She reached for it, but Poole stayed her hand. "Not yet. There's another way." He turned to the letters, reading a final clue. "The serpent's tongue speaks in silence. It's not about drinking, he said. It's about confession. Varnley's trap tests guilt. Speak the truth, or the key claims you. The group fell silent, each weighing their secrets. Then, unexpectedly, Holt stepped forward, his face ashen. I knew Varnley's work. Not as Gideon Lyle, but as his student. He sent me a letter before he vanished, warning of betrayal. I came to find it, to sell it. Mrs. Dodd caught me searching her room. She suspected me. Holt's confession, halting but sincere, broke the dam. Fairfax admitted to tampering with the wine, hoping to loosen tongues but unaware of the vial. Miss Grey confessed to stealing a page from Varnley's journal, seeking material for a play. Julian revealed he'd sketched Eleanor's study, suspecting her motives. Clara, last, admitted to hiding a belladonna sample, fearing it would implicate her. Each confession peeled back layers, but none claimed Mrs. Dodd's death. Eleanor, her voice steady, spoke last. I am the betrayer. My husband stole Varnley's formula, and I came to atone. Mrs. Dodd found the journal first and confronted me, fearing I'd sell it. I didn't kill her, but I know who did. She turned to Thomas, her gaze piercing. You burned the letter, didn't you? To protect me, because you loved her, and she loved my husband's memory. Thomas crumpled, tears streaming. She was going to expose you, he sobbed. I put the belladonna in her tea. Just a drop to scare her. But it was too much. The shot in the grove, I panicked, trying to stop you all. His confession, raw and anguished, closed the circle. Poole, his notebook full, restrained Thomas, who offered no resistance. The vial, untouched, was sealed as evidence. Varnley's formula, deemed too dangerous, was destroyed by Poole's order. Wyrm's hollow, its secrets laid bare, stood silent as the detective inspector arrived, taking Thomas into custody. The guests, their motives exposed, departed one by one, Clara to her studies, Holt to obscurity, Grey to her plays, Fairfax to his courts, Julian to his canvases. Eleanor remained, vowing to preserve the manor as a monument to truth. As the sun set over Eldergrove, the serpent's coil unwound, its riddle solved not by keys or traps, but by the quiet power of confession. Wyrm's hollow, cleansed of its shadows, whispered no more. And so, the serpent's coil unwinds, leaving Wyrm's hollow silent at last. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through mystery and betrayal. If you enjoyed the riddle of Wyrm's hollow, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Porchlight Tales for more spine-tingling stories. Your support keeps the tales alive.